Well, hello. My name is Corinne Gunter, and I am almost ready to graduate with my Master of Arts in Transformational Leadership. And so this is my capstone project, and I'm going to be talking about power, presence, and partnership, and just some of the learnings that I've had at CJP alongside the practical experience that I've been experiencing over these last, I think I've been working on this program for about 5 years and been doing work in Central and East Africa for about 10 years. So here's kind of the introduction. When I think about peace building and think about this particular presentation, I really think about, if I kind of were to summarize the whole thing, it's a journey to one another, meaning it's this journey to togetherness. And the question I think I really have is there a way to shift this narrative that there is a giver and receiver, and that we're really mutual learners, and we're all being transformed in the process of moving toward reconciliation and forgiveness and development, that it really kind of levels the playing field and addresses the power imbalances that seem to exist, especially with NGOs and organizations from the West. So really the two questions that I wanted to focus on in this capstone is first, how did the dynamics of power, presence, and partnership impact peace building? And then secondly, I wanted to think about it in terms of what is emerging as I wrestle with this interplay of practice, theory, and theology, both in individual and community transformation. In addition to having a nonprofit called Rise Up Women International, I'm also a pastor. And so as I think about the practice that I've been engaged in really in 20 years in pastoral ministry, before that in business and strategic planning, and then more recently, the last 5 years studying theory in CJP alongside lots of reading, how does our theology, what is the interplay of those three areas? Because I really do believe foundationally so much of what we do and the way that we show up in the world is based on our belief system of who God is, our understanding of God, and our understanding of who He thinks we are or how He sees us, and then how that impacts the way that we live and engage in the work that we do and show up in our world. And so this presentation really is centering around one area, around a 10-year partnership with ALARM, which is African Leadership and Reconciliation Ministries here in Rwanda. And I'm actually in Rwanda, and I'll kind of talk about that just in a little bit to let you see some of the things that are happening and hopefully share some of my journey through CJP and also this partnership. So let me give you just a little bit of background in terms of this heart and engagement in Africa. I was in South Africa in 2011, and in that particular, it was a vision trip that we went with a NGO that was located in the United States, but was ran by a white South African. And one of I really enjoyed that. We had the opportunity to see several different areas of impact. But one of the things that was disconcerting to me is that we were really kept at a distance from the individuals who were on the ground doing the work. So we kind of went to just watch and see from a distance. And even that particular leader of that organization used the phrase that he wanted to wreck us. And it was kind of at the heights of HIV/AIDS, but it felt very much like we were observers of the impact that was happening, but there was this real distance between what was happening. It really wasn't alongside. So after that trip, I began really dreaming of a day when women from different parts of the world would really no longer be strangers, that they would call each other by name and become friends and sisters who both supported and strengthened each other. I imagined that it was possible that even if we lived in different contexts in different places, whether it was in the United States or across the world, that we could share each other's joy and sorrow, and that we could share our passions and plans for making a lasting impact in our lives and in our world, and then really cheer each other on as we take action toward that. And so this dream actually has become a reality. I've been working in that sector really for the last 10 years internationally, but 2 years ago formed and founded an organization called Rise Up Women International. And the work and that dream, I feel like it's really kind of becoming this reality through the work of Rise Up and our field partners. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was not just have my voice related to power, but one of our field partners, this is Noelle, he's the Community Transformation Coordinator at Alarm, African Leadership and Reconciliation Ministries in Rwanda. And so we sat down and had a conversation about this very topic, power, presence, and partnership. So I'd love for you to listen to him. I'd love to have a conversation with you about power and presence and partnership, and the dynamics of that and how it interplays with peace building. And so we've been in relationship for 10 years, 10 years
Yes.
With your organization, African Leadership and Reconciliation Ministries, Alarm,
Yes.
here in Rwanda. So thank you for agreeing to talk today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's just start with that. Like, what is that relationship between power dynamics, presence, and partnership in the work of peace building?
Thank you for that question. Most of time you have this power and balance, and talking about peace, you know, the history of Rwanda, and also the vision of Alarm was just to empower the leaders who could reconcile and transform the communities. So the power was just the first step was to reduce this power and balance by just helping those who are down to raise up them so that we can have power balance, like according to the knowledge, according to the skills, so that we can have peacefully communities. Because we can't have a peaceful communities when there is no balanced power and there is no peace. Yeah, that's in short what Alarm is doing by raising up and getting a balanced power and have peace, because peace also is built on common interest. Like you are gaining, and me also I'm gaining, so now we can have a common understanding. That's where we can now start talking about peace. Thank you.
And so Alarm, you're here all the time.
Yes.
Moving around, doing peace building, conflict resolution, community transformation. You're here all the time. But you also invite people like me, a Mzungu, right?
White people.
Yeah, white people. So how does that interplay of a potential power imbalance play out? How does that work in this context?
Thank you very much. I would like to start from the colonial time.
Yes, thank you.
That time, like it's like the white people used to have their common ideas, their common interests, and they like to impose it to the black people. So from that time, there is a kind of belief, common belief, from black people to white people. Like we used to say this, white people don't care about the interests of black people. So taking example from what Alarm is doing, the partnership you have with many white people coming to help us training, we've at our own developed programs, project according to our context. So once these white people are coming and supporting our idea in our context, in the way we define the project, that is really now reducing this power imbalance and also breaking this common belief of the black people to white people.
Yeah. Does that happen? How often do you see that kind of partnership happening, and does it happen quickly or does it happen over a long period of time?
Just to change the belief takes longer, but when the people are seeing, are interested, it can take short. For us, just because we are interested, and most of the time, not most of us, or every time you just supporting the idea that we developed, that relationship has just took like a short time. And also, the other example that help us to just to reduce the time that it could take is just you empower the community from the grassroots level to we empower them so that they can go back also and empower the rest of the community. So once now you have the teacher, what people have trained many people, but at the second, those who were trained are able to go and in their respective area to train others. That's why we reduce also these barriers on unbalance. People can understand well, oh, this is very important because these people were trained by what people and they are coming also to train us. So people can understand well. Thank you.
I'd love to have a conversation.
So I really appreciated Noelle's insight related to power and power imbalance, and both within the country and then also when we think about what we would consider outsiders coming to be with or alongside. And so I feel like I'm continuing to learn every time that I'm here and trying to learn more and more about the culture and the context, but always knowing that the person with the knowledge would be those individuals who live here and are indigenous to this community and working alongside those leaders. And so I think about even as we continue doing this work, I actually was just part of a meeting just a little bit ago with a brand new group of women that are going to be trained in business and microfinance and savings groups. And even in the introduction with that is the idea that Rise Up in our organization comes to be alongside, but even to be behind the local leaders here and the community leaders. It's not about us coming and offering our wisdom. We come as learners and share among what's happening and co-create that space and are encouraging one another. And so I'm really super grateful to have had this opportunity to be with Alarm over these last 10 years. I think when I first started coming, one of the things that we heard early on was there are a lot of people who come once, but the fact that you continue to come back shows that you really do care and have a heart for not only women, but for this particular company, or this particular country. So the kind of the timeline and what I want to talk about is one particular initiative we've been doing over the last 5 years. And so our first visit to here, when I was with a church that was looking for a partner in the area of bringing about reconciliation and healing where there has been hatred, was in 2013. And that trip really, I think, began to define what this relationship was going to look like. We came to see, to listen, and to learn, and just to be with. We didn't do any conferences. We didn't do any training. We just kept moving around the country with the founder of Alarm, listening and learning and hearing about their context and having so much conversation as we moved from place to place. About 18 months later, I was invited to come back and to consider engaging and helping launch a 3-year women's leadership training alongside Alarm. And one of the things that was interesting, even in that moment, the way in which my organization, our church, did ministry or did the work with our partners was you only committed to 1 year and one trip. And even in that, I began to talk with our church to say, if we're going to engage in this, I really would love a 3-year commitment so that once we start, we could finish. Because I think one of the things that were learning about the work here in Rwanda is often it doesn't get finished because the partner or the funding or the person changes. And so I really wanted to start with this idea that we were going to start something that was going to be for multiple years in a deep partnership as opposed to potentially going somewhere. And that tended to fit well with our organization. We just weren't structured in a way to do that. So in 2015, we began a 3-year women's leadership training, and where we would bring teams back really twice a year to do a variety of conferences. I'll kind of talk about that in just a little bit. So between 2015 and 2018, we returned with a core team. It was always myself alongside either one of 2 different people, and then we would bring about 3 or 4 other people with a variety of roles. So we came again and again and again. And then in 2018, we celebrated the graduation of 55 graduates from the Women's Leadership Training Program, which was an amazing celebration. There were government officials, there were church leaders, there were family members, there were all kinds of people here. And again, it was an opportunity for these women to be both honored and celebrated, but also to begin to kind of push against that stereotype that these women did not have a voice or role within this community and within the church. And so even the founder of Alarm did this beautiful presentation on that we need to empower women in order for positive change to happen. And as we empower women, that it not only impacts their life, but it impacts the lives of everyone around them and has a lasting multiplying effect. So it was a huge celebration. And at that point, we began to talk about innovating and to talk about what that might look like to take some of those graduates and begin to train them to become trainers of trainers. So instead of a US or Western team coming back and doing the training, what would it look like to come alongside a smaller group of trainers, which we call TOTS, to take this program further into the corners of the country, to reach even more rural women who don't have access to training, so church and community leaders. And so the 55 graduates were from all over the country, from all the regions, and from a variety of church denominations. So lots of training and reconciliation was actually happening amongst those individuals. And then innovating and trying this new program where it's not dependent on Westerners coming to do the conferences, and also being able to reduce the cost of that so that it could go further and longer and multiply more. And so in 2022, that's why I'm here. We've launched the WLTI, which was the Women's Leadership Training Institute in both the Eastern and Northern provinces. And each of those provinces have 50 women who are being a cohort for the next 3 years to walk through and learn from the women's leadership training. And it's being led and facilitated by Rwandan trainers of trainers that had graduated from that program. So it's so encouraging to be here and to watch these women stepping into their gifting with courage and bravery, and as a team being led, and we're just there to really cheer them on, to do some coaching, maybe to clarify any questions, and then hope to continue to replicate this as we go. And so I think pictures are better than words, but I just gave you a ton of words. So here are a few pictures. This was the beginning of the Women's Leadership Training cohort way back in 2015. And I look at these pictures and I can name most of them, if not all of these women, and to have been alongside to experience both my own transformation and their transformation was such an amazing gift from God, to be able to just be part of that. So this is the original group. In 2018, here's a picture from graduation where they're lining up, getting ready to march in. And here's really the conferences that we were doing with the women's leadership training. It covered, they were church and community leaders that had been tapped and noticed within their community as key female leaders. But we did biblical theology and the story of God, trauma healing and resilience, leadership development and mentoring, Bible doctrine, women's realities, health, education, HIV/AIDS, Christian transformation and child development, conflict resolution and peace building, community development, economic empowerment, and family enrichment. And each of those times, we would look for someone with a heart for this work, but also with the education and experience to do that. So with women's realities, we brought a nurse, and we also brought a doctor who had been serving in Uganda for the last 5 years. And they were the ones that were really could speak to the context in terms of the trauma healing and resilience. We really followed the STAR program with a few variations, but that was also led by a PhD counselor and professor and specialist in trauma, and all the other areas as well. So really, this was a great opportunity for a holistic program that they would work together as a cohort, and between each conference, they would go home and begin applying it to their local context and sharing it with others. And so from that graduation, we started with actually 4 different teams that we were going to move toward 4 different provinces, or at least the northern, the eastern, and the southern province. And then we were going to have a Kigali group. But as we all know, COVID came and we had to readjust and realign. So we ended up only focusing on the northern and eastern province as we're moving forward. Part of that was because we only had one individual from the southern province, and she was going to partner with some of the women that live more in the Kigali area. And so we thought, let's start with these 2 areas, and then we can continue to adapt as necessary to increase the effectiveness as we're going. And so we started with the northern and eastern province. And so here are the trainers of trainers. The eastern province, this group that we were with a couple of weeks ago, and then just last week we were with the northern province trainers of trainers, and just again had the opportunity to just both cheer for these women and encourage them and sit as learners, and to hear them beginning to launch this program has just been amazing. And they really are like dear sisters and colleagues. And so I thought, as I was thinking about the presentation, I really thought about this diagram that peace building is really about learning and living it out over and over again. And I think that's really true in terms of this particular initiative, and really all the initiatives, that starting with what is happening on the ground in terms of analysis, and the local leaders building that context, beginning to ask what is true, what are the challenges, what are your hopes and dreams, and what are your action plans, and then talking about what that looks like to come alongside, planning, and then learning as we go and adapting this continual cycle of action based on what are the needs, what's true now, what do we hope to be the future, and then what needs to change in order for this to become a reality. And even tomorrow, I'm going to sit down with the leadership development coordinator here, and we're going to just talk through what we just experienced over the last 2 weeks as we continue to plan for the additional really 2.5 years for this women's training. So I'm really looking forward to having that experience. I think that a couple of questions that really stood out to me with CJP is this question of really who holds the power in partnerships, how are decisions made, and then who actually benefits for that. And I can't remember which particular course this was in, but continuing to understand that we are the work, that we see ourselves in the work, we have to do that. And it's so essential in both any leadership, and especially in peace building, that we must consider as we do the work that we are the work, and that transformation is this ongoing multi-layered process for both individuals and for the whole. So so many really good models in our Foundations 1 class of unpacking those power dynamics with the pillar diagram, with the Dugan's nested model, and the power with, power for, all of those pieces I think are going to be really impactful as we kind of step back and kind of decide what are the key elements moving forward. I think one of the things that I kind of wanted to kind of finish up this presentation with is this idea of umaganda. And it's something that just has come up over the course of the years that we've been here. Umaganda is something that happens here in Rwanda, that is the last Saturday of each month from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., where all the community members come together to achieve some common purpose, some community project. So the community makes the decision on what will be done, and then all of the individuals from that community come together. They accomplish this particular task together. It might be building a home for someone, repairing a home, it might be road work, it might be cleaning up something. But the idea is that alone it would be impossible to do it, but together these things can be accomplished. And then the other piece that happens with this is often after this, the relationships are continued to be strengthened, because lots of conversations happen in this movement. And I've been here before on Umaganda, and there is no movement within those hours, that it is mandatory that every community member participate in this Umaganda and are part of it. We tried to move on that day. We needed to get out into the rural area, and we were stopped multiple times, asked, "What are you doing? Why are you moving?" And because we were trying to get to Chimbili, which is a coffee plantation, we were going to do Umaganda out there. We just got started late. So it was truly an awakening to the significance of this. But I think on this particular trip, my understanding of Umaganda has been expanded, that it's not something that they do, it's a way of being and engaging with one another. And so I had the opportunity to also talk to another person here. His name is Nicodem. And I just asked him to tell me a little bit more about this concept of Umaganda that he would call togetherness. So take a listen to this.
So can you tell us a little bit about what Umaganda really means here in Rwanda?
Okay, thank you for the question. As far as I know, Umuganda is something which is culturally a support or a hand that you can give to somebody, but expecting that he or she also another time should give you this hand. It was culturally to show that I live because you live. Today you are lacking this, but tomorrow you will lack it. I lack this, and you will come also to give me a hand in that one. It's you know that we live in a cooperative culture. It's community building is building relationships, not really something which happens once in a while, but it's daily giving Umuganda, giving this support morally, very financially, or your strength to do something, to build together something. That it's in short, I can say it's togetherness, Umuganda.
Yes.
And when you are in Muganda, all people are gathering, the richer, the poor, the women, the young people, they are doing something also is kind of fellowship. It's the time that we should know each other, know the weakness, know what this one is lacking, because we can go into Umuganda to support somebody, but from there we can know, oh, there's another lady, there's another man who needs this. Next, we'll go to this one. Next time we go to this one. That's Umuganda. It's togetherness.
I loved that conversation with Nicodem. He had been my translator, and we had worked together really for the last several years. And we were just having a conversation while we were taking a break from some work we were doing with a group of Christian lawyers that are doing some peace building and advocacy work out in Muzanzi area. But again, I think it's so foreign, if you will, from what our Western perspective is. It always feels like there is a giver and receiver. And so I just am wrestling with this idea of what does Umaganda look like within our context in the US, that it's not a program, that it actually is a way of being, and what can we learn and how can we take this forward in a way that really begins to bring about some healing within our own context in the US, and how do we begin to value relationship over accomplishment and achievement, and focus on that as opposed to just getting things done. And so again, had another conversation on Umaganda with Noelle, who is the same man that you just listened to a little bit ago. And so take a listen to this and see what we might learn from Noelle.
Together also because Umuganda concerning everyone, whether you're rich, poor, or whatever. So that time of being together, you can learn from others, but also we can help like the families and conflict. They can come after the Muganda, then discuss, they get advice from elders and whatever. So that kind of community Muganda also is supporting in that processes of peace building. Because as people know each other, I know where you live, I know my family, so we can start from there by sharing, and also get closer through the Muganda.
So it's really more than just doing something together. It's really
Yeah,
being together, being
yeah,
with one
more
another.
than just working, it's also being together, know each other, supporting each other, materially or even ideas.
I think about that in terms of when our relationship began. We spent a lot of time just getting to know each other and talking about our families and really not just coming and getting the work done. It was really about literally sitting here
Yes.
and sharing over a long period of time and slowly building this relationship where we could continue to do.
Yeah, that's how the relationship is built. Like the proverb I said, when you want to build a strong relationship, you just both sides. You will be playing your part, and also I will be playing my part.
Yes.
So that's what we do. Get to know each other slowly. As people are getting to know each other, they continue sharing even many things. So just to strengthen the relationship.
And so we talk about reconciliation as this big topic, right? We're going to work toward conflict transformation and all of these things in order to get to reconciliation. What does that look like here in Rwanda in terms of coming to being able to reconcile with one another?
Yeah, like I've said before, it's just the matter of praying. Each part has its role to play. And because even before the genocide against Tutsi, people in Rwanda used to live together, used to share everything. Except this, the political propaganda that separate the population, but they have been living together, sharing together, having weddings of their children.
Yes.
So it was really much easy to get again reconciled because they still have some ties, some common activities they used to do, the way they used to support each other. So that's the way of living even before. That's what has helped the community of Rwanda to get reconciled, because in the village or wherever they still have something to share every day.
Yeah, I feel like we have so much to learn from our friends and colleagues here in Rwanda. I love that he says that everyone has a part to play and everyone is doing their part, and that they really are living out this who they were before some of the divisions and colonization happened that began to separate them, and then kind of the history of that. And so again, I just think I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to learn. And I do wonder what we can learn as a nation associated with what has happened in Rwanda and the ways that they're able to come back together. And so partnership really has to be this collaborative work that has deference to the insiders for all decision making. And so I really do believe that one of the ways that we have hopefully, at least at some level, address the power imbalance is, and if you believe that there's power associated with financial resources, which I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess it's true in some level, you've got to have resources, but I think that the decision making happens with those who are here on the ground, who are gathering the information, and we're constantly stepping back and listening and asking questions and trying to translate that so that we might be able to do some of the resourcing of the work. So I love the word alongside, that we're exploring and discovering together, and that we're learning and co-learning and co-creating with deference to the insider, not an NGO coming to declare or bring our own things to impose on an organization here on the ground. And that kind of brings me to just this, the Rise Up Women International, which is this nonprofit that I started as a result of the work that we've been doing over the last 10 years. Our mission is to empower women and girls to reshape their communities by breaking cycles of violence, injustice, and inequality. And I really want to focus on that. We're here to encourage, equip, and empower local leaders to reshape their communities, not that we're coming in to reshape it, that it's really about providing those opportunities and resourcing at some level to encourage and hope and confidence and courage to really step up and step into those places, that this idea that we're maybe creating some space for these things to happen, for them to come together, and also for us to learn from them. And this is just a few pictures of some of the conversations and small group experiences that were happening there. I just wanted to end with a few takeaways, and really I want to call them ways of being. My so what and now what, and this is really not an inclusive list, but at least it's a few kind of highlights that I picked up in I think it was 508, but really always remembering to create space for people to feel safe and seen, so they can authentically show up. So always, always, always allow time for check-ins and to build relationships. That's more difficult, I think, at home than it is here in Rwanda because it's such a high value. But I want to carry that home. It's worth it for everybody in the room to introduce themselves if you're doing a workshop or conference. And I've seen that happen several times here, and hopefully I'm including that more at home. I think the other thing I really walk away with is that social change really is a wicked problem, that it's complex, it's interconnected, it's emergent, and that it happens through a variety of interventions and based on various theories of change. There is no one right way to solve these problems, but there is various ways to engage and make positive change, but it is going to require various voices, and often the voices that are excluded from the conversation. And so I just want to remember to not give up and to just do the right next thing, and then continually adapt and adapt and adapt as the environment continues to emerge. I think the other thing I really am walking away with is just the impact of trauma, and how if it's not attended to, that it will leak out and create catastrophic eruptions that shake the earth and perpetuate the cycles of violence. So I really want to be very aware of creating trauma-informed environments, both within any context that I'm doing internationally, but also within the context of the US, and really practice trauma-informed care and see and use that lens and understanding ways to help build resilience and provide care and really work toward honoring the growth and maturity that people are experiencing as they're finding and addressing some of the trauma in their lives. And then I think the other thing that, especially within the context of the US, and some of the things that have happened within church context, that, systems take on a life of their own, whether it's an NGO that's crossing the pond to do work, or it's a church, or it's a denomination, or it's an organization, is that unhealthy systems perpetuate harm and become laden with disease. Like, it is infectious in a bad way. And so I really want to be about seeking to not just deal with what's on the surface, but to uncover the root of this disease and work toward overall wellness, so that we're caring for people and we're honoring the dignity and value of every person, and we're being inclusive of all voices. And so dismantling some of the hierarchy and even patriarchy that exists within many, many systems, both in the US and abroad. And so that's pretty much it. Mirakoze Chani, which is thank you very much, here in Rwanda. And if you have a chance, I'd encourage you to stop by our website. We're getting ready to rework it a little bit for the upcoming projects for 2023. And so I do that. And then I also am a pastor at Mercy Road Church. So thank you so much to everyone who has been part of this journey, both classmates as well as professors. I'm really glad to be finished, but super sad that I'm not going to have this continued engagement on such a routine basis, but do plan on continuing to be engaged with the CJB community. So thanks for listening, and I appreciate you.